Happy Tuesday. You got a pretty quick PowerPoint today on some global issues. It's part two. After that, you got one lesson left for the week, and then we're tapering away from some of the lessons. You're getting towards the end. So, all right. Might have some visitors today. We'll see. Right now, it's just my dog just snuck in the room. Bailey, come here. Bailey. Oh. You say hi to the class? Bailey, can you say hi? She'll be whining in a bit. All right. Global issues too. She'll want to get out of here once she realizes I'm just lecturing. Oh, there. All right. Hang on. All right. Global issues too. We talk about the struggles in Africa. So we'll talk about some of the struggles and some of the strengths of Africa, and then we'll just kind of be done. All right. So not all Africa. Oftentimes we associate Africa as a continent of poor, poverty, but mostly underdeveloped nations, but that's not necessarily true. All right. So the world's fastest growing middle class is actually in Africa. There's a lot of potential, and that's probably one of the best ways for Africa to remove itself from chronically poor and underdeveloped status. So. All right, South Africa, it's a story of two different tales. There's very rich and wealthy, and there's also very poor. All right, so let's talk about this. South Africa, they had segregation, just like the United States segregation in the 1960s. There's segregation in South Africa as well. In 1948, there's a law on the books called apartheid, and that legally segregated the whites and the blacks, or the Africans, in South Africa. The leader that kind of rises up is Nelson Mandela. He's born in an upper middle class family, and he embraces the same ideas of Gandhi, of peaceful, of nonviolence. And at the same time, it's the 60s. So in America, he's hearing about Martin Luther King Jr., and he's also adopting those ideas of nonviolent, peaceful protests and civil disobedience. However, it doesn't get him anywhere. So by the mid 60s, he's embracing the idea of using physical force and violence to achieve his means by uniting whites and blacks, or just ending apartheid. So some of his followers blew up a power line. And then because he was connected to them when they're caught and arrested for attempting to do so, he's convicted and sentenced to life in jail for the crime. You fast forward, and over those 30 years, roughly 30 years, he's in jail, still the leader of this movement for blacks and whites to integrate. And I should say at the time, he gives up the violence after that 1960 arrest. He goes back to peaceful protest and civil disobedience. By 1994, things are changing in Africa, and he's finally released. And once he's released, South Africans have a vote, and he is elected the first black president of South Africa. And it's the first time in their history that all races were allowed to vote, and that was when apartheid eventually ends in the country. All right, so this is, in essence, the South African version of Martin Luther King Jr. All right, so, but I wish that South Africa was a perfect story, but it's not. There's still tension even to this day. Oftentimes, the really wealthy whites in South Africa have gated communities, and the indigenous South Africans are still in poverty. So it's not a perfect story. And then there's other issues Africa has as well. HIV, AIDS epidemic, fallout from imperialism, corrupt governments are systemic through the issue, ethnic cleansing. It's hurt Africa in the past, and it hurts it to this day. All right. So you can't deny the fact that imperialism had a negative impact on Africa. At one point, Africa was one of the, remember the Mansa Musa and the wealth of Mali and Ghana was very wealthy and affluent, but imperialism kind of wrecked all of that wealth. Slave trade didn't help either, and warring African tribes did not help either. We look at Africa's life expectancy; it's incredibly low. So here's the government corruption map. You see a snapshot of Africa. It's not good. It's unstable governments, corruption. You also look at North Asia, Russia, or even parts of the Middle East. It's just trouble. And North Korea. So infant mortality is also tragic for Africa as well. So a lot of kids unfortunately die at a young age in Africa. And then it's challenging. And Africa they are predominantly democracies, built on the idea of Europeans who came in with democracy from the Enlightenment. However, these are oftentimes corrupt. There are warlords, there are people being paid, and democracy is not truly a democracy. All right. You also see the exact opposite. You've got a no hidden democracy. You've got totalitarian regimes, autocratic rule, one person has complete power. And you've got other areas where it's hybrid regimes between democracy and dictators. Go figure. All right. Here's a snapshot of AIDS. If we could look at it in this way, every little dot here is a way to measure AIDS. So you see here's North America. There's the Caribbean, Latin America. See how small they are? And then you see Africa, 22.4 million. All right. So percentage of adults. All right, so let's look at some of the problems that really have haunted Africa. One, it just lacks economic development. You oftentimes don't see major international companies coming into Africa to set up production. You don't see Google or Amazon going to Africa because it's risky. The governments are corrupt, warlords are in charge, and it really lacks a middle class or an educated middle class for these higher paying jobs. So that's one thing that's kept Africa economically disadvantaged. And we said it's got a growing middle class, but it's still small compared to the rest of the country or countries or continents as a whole. It's growing, but it still lacks a large middle class. And a middle class, like that is what really fuels your economy. That's what fuels innovation. You can afford to send your kids to free school, to take the next step in their careers. Africa just doesn't have that, lacks a middle class. And then third is the complications from the Cold War and European imperialism. So imperialism, obviously the Europeans came in, took over, put their own values there, took whatever they wanted in terms of resources out, and that hurt Africa for the long term. The other thing is the Cold War. Oftentimes you looked at the impact of the United States and the Soviet Union fighting some micro proxy battles and people dying in the process as well. So it wasn't a good combination. And what we look at really, the big fall is this point here. Oftentimes when the Europeans came in and redrew their own maps, they had no idea what tribes didn't like each other, and they stuck these tribes together. And when these Europeans leave, and you've got this tension between the different tribes who have been sometimes treated better or worse by the Europeans, there is some serious ethnic cleansing and genocides as a result. So it's just not good. So all this together is Africa systemically suffers from food shortages. HIV is an issue that we're still trying to figure out. Blood diamonds are basically the diamonds that are sourced out, that our kids work in minefields for warlords, and they get these conflict diamonds, and they sell them on the black market. And they sell them to diamond buyers who get a good deal for them. The buyers in Europe or the United States buy inexpensive diamonds, not knowing that they're mined by refugee children. Ethnic cleansing, people are killing each other. Different tribes have killed each other in Africa, mostly in the 90s. Desertification is the desert's getting bigger, the Sahara's getting bigger, and there's less and less places to grow your food or to herd your cattle, and that's causing some food shortages. The lack of decent drinking water, you put it all together, and most of all of Africa is considered just underdeveloped by the United Nations. So let's take a look at one of the unfortunate events in African history. You got the Rwandan genocide. You may have seen the movie Hotel Rwanda. If you haven't, definitely get approval from your parents before you watch it. But it does a good job portraying the genocide. A good job portraying the genocide in a fashion that was historically accurate. So the story's pretty simple. You've got Rwanda. It's controlled by European power, and then by the late 80s, the 70s and 80s, these Europeans are starting to leave. And when they leave, you've got two groups that are in Rwanda. You've got the Tutsis. They are light-skinned, and they've been treated by the Europeans. They've had much better treatment because of their lighter skin. It goes back to the idea of social Darwinism. Like the lighter your skin, the more advanced you were. So these Tutsis were given the best jobs by the Europeans. The other side are the Hutus. The Hutus are darker skinned Africans, different tribes, and they were treated poorly by the Europeans because they're darker skinned. So when the Europeans leave and the Tutsis are around who've had the good life, the Hutus enacted genocide. They want revenge of how they've been treated so well. There's an opportunity. There's more of them too, by the way, the Hutus. So when you put it all together, about 800,000 Tutsis are killed, slaughtered. And even the people, the Hutus that supported the Tutsis, the lighter skinned, they were killed. The moderates were killed off. It's rampant. We didn't get involved in the United States or the United Nations because of America had soured on the fact that we had a U.S. soldier killed in Ethiopia. So America didn't want to get involved, and we didn't. 800,000 people died in the 90s. Yeah. 3/4 of the Tutsi population killed off in this genocide. I remember when I was a kid, I was probably 11, 12, and I read this cover of Time magazine. It still sticks with me. And so I put it up there. There are no devils left in hell. The missionary said they're all in Rwanda. So next thing is really complicated. We're going to talk about what's happening in Darfur, Sudan. It's tapering off as of late, but it's been an issue for a long time. So one of the other genocides we're looking at is what happens in Darfur. So you got the country of Sudan here, all right? And Darfur is a region of Sudan. It's kind of like the West or the Northeast for us, or the Deep South. Darfur is a region within the country of Sudan. All right, so here's the country of Sudan. We'll take a look at that, and Darfur is in it. So in the north, let's break these things down. North Sudan, they are predominantly ethnically Arab. All right, so they look like Arabs. They are religiously Muslims, and there's no oil up here. But you can see on the map, there's access to the sea. So North Sudan, they're Arab, they're Muslims, and they don't have oil, but they have access to international shipping. Next thing, we take a look here down in South Sudan. South Sudan, they're ethnically black, so they don't look alike. They're religiously Christians, so there's a difference of religion here. They have the oil, a lot of it, but they can't get it out for international shipping. They have to go to the north to get it shipped. So where all of the money was, it was located up here in the shipping. South Sudan would get, they'd harvest all of the oil, they'd ship it up here, and the money was all in the north with these predominantly Arab Muslims. And these black Christians in the south were sick of it. So they've waged a war that lasted almost 20 years between North and South Sudan. And in the end, there's a deal. It's like 51% of the oil profits go to North Sudan, and in South Sudan, like 49%. But they get some money, they get some equity finally for the sale of the oil to build their own areas. The area that gets left out is Darfur. So let's take a look at them. They are black, so they have a similarity, or African similarity between these two in terms of looks. But what makes them different is they're Muslims, right? So these two look alike, but they have different religions. These two don't look alike, but they have, they're religiously Muslim, but they're not the same type. Sunni and Shia, there's a different type of ethnicity. They have no oil, they have no access to the sea, and the desert is also creeping into the area, and they're losing crops, they're losing animals, so they are rapidly getting poor. They see all the money going between North and South Sudan, and the only way to get it is for them to steal it, is to attack it. And whenever you attack oil supplies, it causes spikes in oil because it's instability. If you ever see like incidents in the Middle East, oil's prices go up, your gas price goes up. So Darfur wants some of the money because they have nothing. They're doing all these raids to steal this crude oil and put it on the black market and sell it, just because they're financially in trouble. So it's causing all these spikes in gas. Nope, you cannot watch YouTube. So I'd show you this video if we're in class. It's pretty powerful, but it's definitely one of those things where I need to be there to walk you through it. This guy does a really good job talking about the struggles there. So long story short, the big player in this whole scenario is China. China goes in and they want this really cheap gold. So what they start doing is they start giving the North and the South weapons, and they start giving them attack helicopters. And the best way to get rid of the people of Darfur, get rid of all the rebels, they just start killing all the villages where the rebels might live, killing the women, killing the children. Yeah, and committing atrocities. They just wiped them out. Rape the women, oftentimes putting oil on the kids and burning the kids alive, hurting them in different areas, locking them down so the rebels can't get out and disturb it. And all of this is basically paid for by China. All right. So China is a major player in this black gold. And the international world has basically done nothing about this. So, interesting cartoon. Genocide occurring in Darfur. One person can make a difference. That person better get started. It goes back to the idea of America does not want to be a world police at this point in its history. So, all right. Let's take a look at this one. Last little kind of random bit. This is moving away from global issues. This is just the European Union. You know what? You're good. You know, a final example. I'm not going to cover the European Union. We'll just end here in Africa. All right. So, all right. That's it. Take a look at your notes. You'll get a quiz, one little short video tomorrow, and you're all done for the week. All right.